following program contains graphic material, including offensive language. Viewer discretion is advised.
You are moving into a dimension not only of sound and politics, but of absurdity. A journey into a land where facts are fiction and reality is up for debate. Up is down, lies disguised as truth, and logic is a distant memory. You've just crossed over into Opposite World. Fortunately, one voice dares to call it like it is. Welcome to The Nicole Sandler Show, your refuge from the madness, where truth still matters, even in Opposite World.
A long, long time ago, due in mid-December, now the DOJ released some Epstein files. And I knew then I had to go and post a viral video exposing all their evil and their wiles. But then I saw my viewer tallies, no analytic peaks but valleys. The algorithm botching, it seemed no one was watching. The word I used could not be said, or shadow bans would drop me dead. I need a word to use instead to call them pedophiles. So I said, that guy is a PDF file, not Adobe, but we know he did some things that are vile. They took a plane, flew it to Epstein Isle, saying we're all rich so we will get by. DOJ will turn a blind eye. Another thing that can't be said, you can't say you wish someone was dead, even if it's really true. So instead use a bit of semantic stealth and ponder on the status of their health, then contemplate the way that years accrue. And if you have the wherewithal to celebrate cholesterol, they'll tell you go to hell. Man, look at his ankle swell. So with this advice and a little luck and a big thesaurus, if you get stuck, you can find the way to say go get fucked and still call them pedophiles. So keep on calling out, that guy is a PDF file, not Adobe, but we know he did some things that are vile. They took a plane, flew it to Epstein Isle, saying we're all rich so we will get by. DOJ will turn a blind eye.
Oh, yeah. That is Patrick Fitzgerald, a friend of the show who is in the YouTube chat room today. Patrick, as always, just awesome. So creative. And, of course, for playing that, I won't get any of the, 50 cents that I would make off today's YouTube video because they're so generous. So if you want to donate to the show today, don't do it through YouTube because I think they take that too. So you can go to NicoleSandler.com, click on the donate page, and there's all kinds of ways to do it. Good one, Patrick. That was awesome. See, I need things right now to sort of help me through this time. I guess I go in peaks and valleys because, the minute he got into office again, I broke down. And I've been working my way out of it. And now, I guess with the events of the last month or two, it's gotten really bad again. But hey, it's one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, it's one day at a time, and I don't even drink. So I know some people will get the reference, but it's sort of like that. Anyway, I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show one of the OG best of the progressive blogosphere. Driftglass is here. You there, Drift?
I sure am. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
are. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right.
And you, me? Okay, I hope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Every day, darling, every day.
Oh, well, thank you, honey. Driftglass, and I think most people here know, Driftglass has been writing at driftglass.blogspot.com for what, since 2004-ish?
20 coming up on 22 years.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah. So right around there, yeah.
Boy, am I tired. My arms are tired,
I
you know?
hear you. Well, you know what? You posted, and also, before I move on, co-hosts the Professional Left podcast with his lovely wife, Blue Gal Fran. You can find them
Yes.
at proleftpod.com, and it's a must-listen to podcast as well. But you posted something on Blue Sky today.
I did.
Yes, it was just like a gif of an old guy saying or singing, "I'm so tired."
Yeah, for you Star Trek nerds out there, that would be Kodos the Executioner. That's not intended to make any reference to that character, but the sheer exhaustion in his
Yes.
voice, the Shakespearean
Here it
actor who
is.
played him
Yeah.
was very resonant with how I feel today.
Oh my God! Well, that's me too, and I commented on it. Here, I'll play it for everybody, so they can even see and hear it. If I can, yeah. Hold on, I got it for you. Well, here you go. It's well, you'll see. Here we go. Come on.
I am tired.
Yeah. Oh.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I didn't realize he was from Star Trek.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what comes from having a head full of pop culture junk and science fiction. Occasionally, it shows up in my writing. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it does. Well, that's
Well,
where
you know,
that's where
for
Driftglass
example,
comes from, right?
We absolutely drift glass comes from the original meaning of drift glass is just glass, industrial glass that gets pounded to death by the surf and turns into something artistic.
Yes.
But it's also a novel and a short story.
Right.
And I was looking for a name back in the Steve Gilliard days, back when I was just a commenter at the news blog, and that one came to me and it stuck. And just because I'm a nerd, I will say that we also used A Rose for Emily, the William Faulkner short story, in our podcast
Oh, wow.
the other day.
Oh,
So
nice.
because it's a top-notch gothic horror story from 1930.
Mm-hmm.
I won't spoil it for you, but if you haven't read it in like 90 years,
Or
that's really
ever.
kind of on you.
Right.
But it's about an old woman who lives in a house. The story uses the first person plural, we, our, which is very rare in short story writing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about an old woman who was very reclusive until she met a man who was from the north, northern. And then one day he disappeared. And no one knows what happened to him. And then one day her house started to smell real bad.
Uh-oh.
And the people around the town decided to, go to her basement, put lime down there, cover up not talk to her about it. And eventually she died after becoming a complete recluse. And they went into her house and found this guy's rotting body on her bed.
Ew.
And next to his body is this single gray hair because she's been sleeping with him,
Oh my.
dead body. And I thought, that's a perfect metaphor for the legacy media. It's been a corpse and it stinks and it's been stinking for decades and
Yeah.
we're suffering from it. And too many people want to cover up the smell. I thought that's a good metaphor.
Yeah,
So-
most definitely. Well, thank you for that. Oh, that's an
Sure.
image that's going to stick with me, though. So,
Well, that's what we writers all hope for. I'm just ripping off from Faulkner because steal from the best. That's what I say.
if you're going to steal, why not? Yeah, so that's a great segue into one of the things I had to talk to you about. First of all,
Yes.
first we'll start with yesterday when the Washington Post blew out a third of their staff, eliminated entire sections like the book section, the sports section. No, I'm not a sports fan, but I know a lot of people are really pissed about it because apparently the Washington Post had a decent sports section. And many of their foreign reporters, like
Right.
somebody, I'm drawing a blank on her name, said, I was just fired in the middle of a war zone.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
300 people out of 800
Yeah.
shown the door, I guess, over Zoom.
It's almost like billionaires shouldn't own media corporations.
You think?
Yeah, billionaires with conflicting business interests with the fascist regime should not own media corporations.
No, that should be a rule. But you know what I realized yesterday is in every single industry, they've taken over. I mean, we, and I'm a Bernie Sanders fan still to this day, and he has been telling us for decades now, watch out, the billionaires are going to take over everything unless you stop them. Well, not enough of us were in on that. Not enough of us tried to stop them. And now they do. They own everything.
Yeah. And if you look, I just had a conversation with our friend Bob Cesca.
Oh, yeah.
Just the other day about the adding an additional dimension to the oligarchy.
Yeah.
Which is Bernie's about the money, and that's great, and the power, and that's great. But they also come with an ethos. They also come with an Ayn Rand ethos that I am morally superior to everyone else because I'm rich.
Right.
Conversely, if you're poor, it's because it's your own goddamn fault. And I shouldn't have to help you because you're a moral failure, not an economic failure. Well, that ethos leads to people thinking they can get away with anything, including having a child sex trafficking ring and going there whenever they feel like it and corresponding with them. And even after Epstein is convicted and goes to jail, they still want to be his pal because we are supermen. We are Ubermen. We're the Ubermensch, and we don't need to follow normal moral rules for normal people because we are gods on earth.
Right.
And that's the part that doesn't get discussed nearly enough.
No, it doesn't. And the fact that the people who elected him, in the heartland of in your territory, middle of America, Driftglass, the people who elected him, I guess were so impressed by this role that he played on The Apprentice on TV because he was on TV. He's a great businessman. Oh, and they've bought into it, and they allow themselves to be made fools of. Not only on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis. The shit that they believe that these people led by Donald Trump are spewing at them. I mean, I almost feel sorry for them, except for the fact that they're the ones who got us into this mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just say the awfulness of the Republican base predates Donald Trump by about 40 years.
Yeah.
He didn't hijack. I hear so many never Trumpers saying he hijacked the party, he stole the party, hostile takeover. Nonsense. It's when you give them the keys and beg them to drive, that's not a hijacking. The base manifested him. The base wanted him. He was the prince who was promised. He was the guy he was Rush Limbaugh and Newt Gingrich combined. He had the viciousness of the political instincts of Newt Gingrich, and he spoke the racist, misogynist, demeaning, eliminationist language of Rush Limbaugh. And they've been listening to that for going on 40 years now.
Right.
And so they were ready for this guy. They hated Jeb. They hated Mitt Romney. They voted for him because he's the closest they ever got. But they've been wanting this guy for so long. And he finally comes in their door and starts talking like them to them. They're like, finally. Yeah. And they pitched in with him 100%. They have gone all in with him, and they're never coming back.
Right.
There's no reasoning with them. There's no fact that's going to change their mind. They're dead from the neck up, but they've been that way for a long time. And another thing that you and I talk about, and the liberals talk about, but almost nobody else does, is the Republican Party before 2016 gave birth to the Republican Party after 2016. And that's something our pundits and never Trumpers do not want to talk about. But this began a long time ago. This is the end state of something they began when we were kids, before we were kids.
That's right.
And that means they're all implicated. That means they helped all build this doomsday machine. That means the legacy media is implicated. They let them rebrand after the Iraq War. They let them become Tea Partiers and let them off the hook then. So there's a collective crime here that everyone who has a position in the media doesn't want to talk about. And so that's why liberals like us exist, I suppose.
I guess. Now, I remember, I'm old enough to remember back to not only W, because I was appalled when he was elected, but I remember Papa Doc Bush. And he was horrible. And so, this has been going on for a long time. But the thing with Trump is every time another Republican gets in there, he's worse than the one before. And this just proves that once 100%. They get some power, they don't let it go. You know, what Obama should have done, a lot of things he should have done. And again, he only had, his majority, he only had what Trump has now for his first 2 years. But great, he got Obamacare through. It was something
Right.
that Trump's now undone. But, what he needed to do was put some of these norms in as law because Donald Trump is saying, norms? Fuck norm. I don't need no norm. I'm going to do what I want. And he is. He's doing whatever he wants. And he's just, those guys were really bad. And again, with Bush, either Bush, I didn't think it could get much worse.
Yeah.
He is worse.
It is worse. Well, Papa Bush invited Rush Limbaugh to the White House and personally carried his bags in because he was getting his ass kicked in the polls and he needed some propping up or he was going to lose, and he did lose. So he turned to Rush Limbaugh. He turned to the Joker, and he didn't realize the price he was going to pay for that. And I think, see, I'm from Chicago. I'm a Chicago man.
Yeah.
Wherever I live, I'm a Chicago guy.
Right.
And Barack Obama is from here.
Yep.
And Barack Obama was like built in a lab by David Brooks to be the both sides guy. I wrote something on 2010 or so that he's half Harvard Yard, half back of the yards. He's the perfect both sides do it candidate. And so we got the perfect candidate that everyone said we needed to bring this country together. And the minute he put his hand on the Bible, remember what was happening at the Caucus Room restaurant in D.C. the day Obama was inaugurated. That was the day that what's his name, who does the polls for the Republican leadership, all met there and said, "Here's the plan. Here's how we're going to sabotage."
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
The day one, it was we're going to sabotage him.
That's right.
At every turn, we're going to destroy him. We're going to birther him. We're going to death panel him. And he thought he was walking in with a fairly big majority and a mandate, which he was. And their response was, "Oh, can I swear on the Nicole Sanders show?"
Yes, you can.
Yeah, they walked in and said, "Fuck no, fuck no, we're taking you down." And he had a majority for like 54 days, because remember that there's that seat, Norm Coleman, and then
Al Franken
dies.
Right.
We all went through that, right? It was very traumatic.
Yes, it was.
But he really thought this was going to solve the problem. That no red states and no blue states were all one America.
Oh, it was
He
a
thought that's what-
post-racial country now.
Sure.
We're in post-racial society, right?
Hell yeah. And I think I might have mentioned this on the show before. Being from Chicago, it always drove me nuts he didn't learn from Harold Washington, the mayor who was like his prototype. The black mayor who won the election, and a majority of the city council turned instantly from, it's 100% Democrat. The 29 of them supported the Republican, and they spent his first term sabotaging everything he tried to do. And what Harold Washington did was name them and shame them.
Right.
He didn't try to pretend these were nice people and there was just a misunderstanding. He called them out by name. He explained to the voters, these people are the ones who are screwing you over. It isn't both sides. It isn't the city council. It isn't Washington or politicians. Fast Eddie Verdoliak and his clown crew of racists are the people who are screwing you over. That's what Obama didn't do. He never did that. He never once threw an elbow, and that was a disaster. That was a freaking disaster, because that let them get away with pretending that the Tea Party was a brand new thing.
Right.
Like all these independents, where are they coming from? They wearing these funny hats, and the whole legacy media swearing that these are brand new people in politics. These are just brand new people, and they weren't. They were the Republicans rebranding after Bush.
Right.
Which is exactly what they're going to do once Trump implodes or drops dead or whatever. They're going to rebrand into something else, go underground, reload, and come back even worse. Unless we stop them.
Yes. Well, I almost said I don't know that there is worse, because it feels that way to me. I think if he could, Trump would go full Nazi. He's taking it as far as he can, and because of that, because of his minions murdering two American citizens on American soil who did absolutely nothing wrong, some people are starting to have enough. Some people who voted for him are saying, like Lindsey Graham did the night of January 6th, I'm out. I'm done. I was with him. I can't do this anymore. But you have to remember, Lindsey Graham, a few days later, goes into an airport and some Trumpers yelled at him. And maybe Donald Trump showed him a picture or two he's got of him and said, watch your mouth, young'un. And, and Lindsey Graham is one of the worst now. John McCain rolls over in his grave every day.
I have I have watched with interest all this tiny handful of never Trump Republicans who instantly colonized the media. Basically doing the liberals tap dance without acknowledging liberals exist at all, saying exactly what we've been saying all along, pointing out the same things. But the two things that are different are, number one, they keep getting surprised the Republican Party's full of Republicans. Like, oh my God, so-and-so, my favorite guy. What about Kennedy? What about, oh my gosh, Bill, what's his name? The doctor in the Senate. I thought he was going to hold
Cassidy. Bill Cassidy.
He was going to hold off.
Right.
And then he and I'm like, of course he did. He's a Republican.
That's right.
They're all terrible.
Yep.
All of them are terrible. And number two, they will not acknowledge we exist.
Nope.
The people who are currently out there barking at Democrats, telling them to move to the center and be more centrist and be more open-minded about people who are leaving the Republican Party because, they feel sorry, will not say the simple phrase, the left was right all along.
Yeah.
The left was right from the very fucking beginning, because that would be the end of their media career.
Right.
Because then you have to ask yourself, well, why the hell am I listening to you? You got everything wrong.
That's right.
Why am I not listening to Nicole Sandler?
Exactly.
For God's sake, why am I listening to Digby?
Right. Hello.
Yeah, well,
but so Driftglass, of course, we went off on a tangent. We was talking about the Washington Post and the massacre there. By the way, the reason is, we're just losing too much money. The Washington Post apparently lost $100 million in 2024. Well, as I said to Brian Karem yesterday, Peter Baker at the New York Times explained, well, that means he could lose $100 million, for every year for 5 years in a row. And he could make up for that with 1 week of his current income.
Absolutely.
It's not about the money. He doesn't need the money. So he's destroying the lives of 300 people. I just read today, one guy who's worked at the Washington Post for 60 years was just fired yesterday.
Yeah. Well, this is just another disposable asset. This is something we went through during the 80s and 90s. I worked at companies that got gutted like this.
Yeah.
They were taken over. They were gutted for their resources, stripped for parts, and tossed aside. And that's what's happened to our entire. And if you look at local media, it's even worse.
Oh yeah, it doesn't exist
our local
anymore.
rag is literally a twig that reports obituaries, sports reports, and weddings, and whatever the hell's going on in Peoria, which is not Springfield.
Right.
Because that's the news service they get their stuff from. But the news services have been abandoned or they've been taken over, which is exactly the plan. When the fascists seize control of countries, they go for the radio, the TV, and the newspapers. And that's exactly what they've done.
Oh, exactly. And we knew that. We knew that. He who controls the media, controls everything. That you can go back to Berlusconi for that one. But so anyway, Washington Post, New York Times was already destroyed. But now we learn that your guy, David Brooks, is leaving the New York Times. But he's going. The Atlantic hired him. Come on,
it's a lateral move. It's a lateral move. Yeah.
I actually like the Atlantic most of the time. I mean, not that I can afford to read it regularly because it's too rich for my blood. And by the way, I had a decent nest egg. I did very well in radio in the 90s. I had money. I owned a house, and thanks to W and his depression, I lost my house there. I've been struggling ever since. Oh yeah. Yeah, David's here. Hi.
Hi, Driftglass. How you doing, buddy?
Good, David. How you doing,
just
man?
wanted to jump in and say real quickly, the Washington Post was not ever a huge profit maker.
No.
Even when Katharine Graham owned it and before her, it was never a huge profit maker. And Bezos knew that when he bought it. So for him to get in front of the public and say, I'm doing this because I'm losing too much money, he could lose $100 million a day for the next zillion years, and he's not going to be in any bread lines, ladies and gentlemen.
Nope.
Fuck him.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and that was true of all of the television networks until they turned all the news centers into profit centers. All of the news centers were the jewels. They were the prestige part. All the commercials you saw on daytime soaps paid for the news, not the other way around.
Right.
And once they turned the news into money makers, that's when things started to go to shit.
Of course. Well, then they discovered that because 60 Minutes back then, when they cared about news and integrity and the truth, made, was getting ratings like,
wait a minute,
like no one had seen before.
You're probably going to sit here and tell me that Barry Weiss is not a great steward of the CBS network. And I just want to say,
yes.
How dare you, ma'am? How dare you question her? And the Ellison family's, attempt to take over all of media in North America.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah.
She is just, fuck her, too. This is Barry Weiss, who used to be or claimed to be somewhat progressive. She's a lesbian. She's married to a woman. Oh, my God. And then I don't know what happened to her, but she went full on maggot with Trump.
Yeah, well, I think she is, before she was a lesbian, she was a grifter. I think she worked the New York Times for a hot minute.
Yes.
She was, and she quit there.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I think she wanted to be canceled by the New York Times. She wanted to be able to go out and martyr, because you might have noticed that the people on the right who get canceled don't really ever get canceled.
No.
They get jobs immediately and make even a better living.
They fail upwards. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I was part of the W Depression too.
Yeah.
I lost my job, I lost my savings, I lost my house, I lost my health care, had to move. I lost everything.
Yeah.
So, and this was, this all coincided with Barack Obama's inauguration, which was very uncomfortable. But yeah, no, I was there. I was right there with you. So I understand at a very gut level what it's like to be in that group of people. Yeah. The reason you are not going to hear Blue Gal on this podcast during the day is she had to leave Crooks and Liars.
Oh, God.
She had
to get a full-time, real-paying job because
a cubicle job.
Right, a clerical job. Oh, God, that's a
cubicle
shame.
job. Yeah,
a cubicle job. Right, that's a
very good
travesty. Right, I'm sure she is, but that's not where her talents are best used, or where the public is best served. And she had to do it because of insurance, right?
Yeah, our insurance went for just her and our youngest went from $700 to $2,500 a month.
Oh my God!
And that's happening to millions of people.
Yes.
That is not just us. That is happening to millions, and most of them are in red states. And most of them, and this is destroying rural hospitals. It's destroying rural medical practices. All the people who got to stay at home to take care of their parents. The knock-on effect is it, and they have been after the Affordable Care Act since Obama proposed it. They've been trying to destroy this thing, and the only reason we don't have a public option is 50 Republicans and Joe fucking Lieberman.
Yep. Joe
That's
Lieberman.
the only reason that option still isn't in there. So, I have no sympathy for anyone in a red state who voted for this stuff 3 times and is waking up going, what the hell happened? Sorry.
I don't get it either. No, I lost both my parents a long time ago. So but they were always Democrats. So I wouldn't have been dealing with a parent who voted for Trump. But when I hear people, even real progressives say, my mother voted for him 3 times. Like, how can that possibly be? But I guess because I lost my mom when I was 19. So what do I know? But I can't imagine being raised in a household like that. So I don't know. And to think that there's somebody out there who would have voted for him 3 times and still thinks that they can trust him on anything, I just don't get it. All right, let's go.
I live among them, so I can tell. Come to the Professional podcast and all will be revealed. All will be revealed.
proleftpod.com. So you've been fixated, for good reason, on David Brooks for many years. So wait, did he leave the Times voluntarily, or did he try to pull a Barry Weiss there?
I think, I don't know, but I know that on our podcast, we read the farewell letter from the New York Times and the welcome to the Atlantic letter from the Atlantic.
Yes.
And the New York Times is just slobbering all over him because I won't quote it at length because that would make everyone ill, but he is the cartographer of America's soul.
What?
He's the greatest, wisest, smartest, most able, decent, blah, blah, blah man who has ever trod the earth. It's terrible to lose him. Tom Friedman is in tears because, David Brooks is leaving and the Atlantic is like, oh, thank God we got David Brooks. And he's going to go over to Yale as well. And some sort of global initiative committee. And I just think because it really isn't David Brooks that I've focused on, except it is.
Yeah.
He's my barometer. He's like, this is where the legacy media is today. This is because he's revered by these people. You know, he has 1,000 imitators across the legacy media.
Yes.
So whatever he's saying is what they're saying. Did you happen to catch or hear about his PBS NewsHour performance like 2.5 weeks ago?
No, I did not.
Okay, so this is right after Alex Preddy was shot, like the day of or the day after, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's on film. It's all on film. And they say basically, what do you think about that, David? I mean, what's going on? And him and Capehart are sitting there. And his answer, he clearly had rehearsed his answer. His answer was, well, you know, there was this football game in 1951, a college football game at Yale and Harvard, I think, and they gave the game film to each team in a sociological experiment, and each team believed they had the penalties called harder against them than the other team. So you don't really know what you see. Everyone just sees everything through the lens of politics. You know, you can't really know what happened. And so I'm going to reserve judgment because everything is politics. Everything is both sides. Everything is filtered through that. And I swear, Jonathan Capehart, who is a meek man, who doesn't push back anywhere near enough, looked like he was going to come out of his seat and slap the crap out of him. But that is pure, distilled, both sides do it toxicity. And that is what way too many people, you talked about who in their right mind could vote for Trump. If you've been hearing for 40 years from everybody, from Cokie Roberts and Peggy Noonan and the people at your local drugstore, both sides, it's Washington, it's politicians, it comes down to, well, who cares who the president is, because everyone's equally bad. This one has a funny laugh and it's kind of scary and is a black woman or a whatever. And this guy says he's going to lower my egg prices.
Yeah.
And I don't pay any attention to politics. I pay no attention. I don't know how my country works.
Right.
I have no idea how the Constitution works. Well, I'm going with the egg guy.
Right.
Because, you know, and then they wake up one day and there are guys in their streets with jackboots shooting citizens. And I wonder what the fuck happened. I can tell you what happened. You didn't pay attention.
That's right.
You flunked the test.
Yeah. You know,
that's what happened.
Right. I bitch about the people who didn't vote. But frankly, if you don't know what the fuck is going on, if you don't follow real news, and I'm not talking about the Gateway Pundit or Newsmax or Fox, not news. I'm talking about real legitimate news. But these days, how do you know where to get it? We can get into that too. But if you don't know what's really going on, don't vote. Stay home. Because I'd rather have informed people voting than not. What I bitched about are the people who, well, I don't vote. We were moving right before Election Day, David and I, and we got into a Lyft or something, and the driver said, "I don't vote." And he had to hold me back because I just was ready to go off. Then one night I wound up in the emergency room and the woman taking my blood. Somehow we got on the subject of, did you get vaccinated yet? And she said, well, I got one of them, meaning she didn't get the COVID vaccine. Right. She got the flu vaccine, but not the COVID vaccine. And I said, what, you have a problem with that? She said, well, I don't talk politics. I'm like, you don't talk politics? Did you vote? I didn't vote. I don't vote. Well, what the fuck are you here for? You know, I wanted to, again, he had to hold me back because, you know, I tend to say what I think. And it sometimes gets me in trouble, but I don't give a shit. I'm afraid, though, like if ICE comes here, I'm going to mouth off to one of those fuckers and, you know, I won't be around much longer.
But great content. I mean, you got to admit, that'd be great radio.
Take it and run with it if that happens. Driftglass, you have my permission.
We stress to our listeners that there's not one cult in this country. There's two. The cult on the right, which is Fox News and hate radio and all those, that's visible. That's very clearly visible. But once you start looking for the cult of both sides do it, please don't blame both sides, which is all Barry Weiss is doing right now. Yeah. I mean, this is just I've heard it called a motivated reasoning machine. It's, you know, it's yes. And it really is like, I'm not going to attack the right so much, but I'm going to attack the left for not doing this. And the left doesn't do that. And it's like, you know, Merck's Law, right?
No.
Only Democrats have agency. Republicans are never responsible for anything. They're just like a force of nature.
Sure.
And anything Republicans do is because Democrats made them do it or didn't stop them from doing it.
Right.
Somehow, these 77 million assholes who voted for Trump have no responsibility for anything. It's my responsibility that they did what they did. That's Merck's law.
Okay.
And there's an entire industry, a second cult of both sides do it that makes sure the average citizen never asks, well, who the hell did this to us? It's always politicians in Washington or Congress or,
No, it's
the
not
system.
Congress. It's the Republicans in Congress.
Right.
And this is a point I make all the time, Driftglass. If just a handful of them would grow a spine and say publicly what they say privately, the emperor wannabe has no clothes.
And
Come
he's
out
insane.
and admit it. But they won't because I think two reasons. One, they're afraid for their jobs because, being employed and having power is the most important thing to them. And two, they're probably getting threats against themselves and their families.
Yep. I think that's probably true. And of course, you can't know that until 20 years later when
Right.
they write their books and say,
That's
yeah,
right.
I was going to come out, but man, those phone calls in the middle of the night.
Yep.
Stephen Miller showing up at my door with a cartoon bomb in his hand.
Yep.
Yeah, that scared the crap out of me.
Right.
I got kids. I got a family to protect.
That's right.
I have a mistress and a bookie that depend on me. So, and that is the way of things.
Yep.
That is the way of things on the right. And that is a reality we kind of have to come to accept, that we need to stop looking for any humanity or decency from the right.
Right.
And we need to stop scolding. Let's stop listening to people who scold us for not being more open-hearted and
please.
reachy-outy. We tried that. It was called the Obama administration.
That's right.
How'd that work out
That's
exactly?
right. Not at all. Not at all. And sorry, he did a few good things. I don't want to take that away from him. But what he didn't do is worse. He didn't build a bench. So when he left office, the Democratic Party had nobody on the, coming up. He did not nurture the people to follow him. He did nothing on that front. And the Democratic Party has been struggling ever since.
Yep.
In addition to the other things he didn't do. So,
Yeah. And
nice
some
guy.
of those things I give him grace for because there are certain things that I'm sure you remember The West Wing.
Yes.
The
TV
best
show.
acting president we ever had,
Yes.
And he's having some argument with a California donor who wants him to come out for gay marriage or something. And he says, you got to understand, I'm a human starter pistol. If I say things, that rallies the right. And Barack Obama was every time he opened his mouth, the right was right there screaming that, look, see the man in the tan suit with the terrorist fist jab
And the
his wife
name.
who's on welfare.
That name.
He was an organizing principle. Hating Obama was the organizing principle of the Republican Party. And it
That's
still
right.
is.
Yep.
And it still is. Boy, do they hate black people.
Yes.
They especially hate black Democrats from Chicago with funny, names.
Right.
And so every time he opens his mouth, I got to believe he calculates what good am I going to do? If I open my mouth and say that Donald Trump is a freaking criminal who should be dragged out of office by his fake, by his short and curlies, what happens? Well, that's not going to happen. Republicans are going to rally around him, and I'm going to become the story. So, I don't envy him that, but I really do wish he'd find some way to weigh in and use his considerable talents to advance the party that he still belongs to. Yeah. I really do.
No, I do too. Because he can, or maybe I don't know. Maybe he's afraid too, because we know of some threats against him. We know about the guy who showed up at his house. We know the the Trumpers, the maggots, have put his address out. They're like, oh, the ICE agents, they need to be masked because otherwise they'll get doxxed. Bullshit. No other law enforcement officer is masked. They all tell us their names and their badge number. That's part of the job. They're not going to get masked, doxxed because you can see their face. That's such bullshit. They just want to be able to go around and murder people if they so choose. They want to enter your home without a warrant because they said they can. You know,
Well,
it's
the cop in Springfield who murdered Sonia Massey is going to jail for a long time. The reason he's going to jail for a long time is we knew his name, we knew his face, the video was there, and we have a judicial system that actually adjudicates these things. But he didn't get to escape into the night and pretend that he wasn't there behind a mask and no badge. That's brown shirt stuff. That's SS stuff. That's third world police state stuff, which our Republican friends are thrilled by.
Yeah.
They love this shit. They absolutely love it. They've been hungry for this. That's what many on the left do not understand. They are fundamentally different than us. They're hardwired authoritarian. I think it was John Dean wrote a book like in 2006 about the conservatives without a conscience, I think. And he goes through the literature and says, look, there's like 26% of the people in this country who are hardwired authoritarian. They want to either follow a strong man or be a strong man. And it's always going to be that way. And that's who these people are. They want us to cry. They want uppity Negroes to be put in their place and people of color. And they want mouthy women to shut up.
Yeah.
And they want white men to be back in charge forever. And they will follow anyone who promises to do that for them.
So, Driftglass.
Yes.
We could go on like this for hours. We could, because I've got pages of notes here.
Go for it.
But here's what I want to ask you: do you see any way out of this? Because I don't think we as a nation will survive another 3 years. I don't know that I as a person will survive another 3 years if it continues like this.
Well, it sounds like you're trying to trick me into predicting the future. And
please, I want someone who can.
Well, I mean, step one. Okay. Yeah. Democrats, most of them, to their credit, are doing everything they can, which is nothing, because they don't have any. They have no power.
Yeah.
We have a billionaire governor here who I'm pretty happy with, actually.
Yeah, he is pretty good.
And he was out there standing up to ICE.
Yep.
He's been unequivocal in his opposition.
Yep.
He funds people. He's funding investigations. He's using his money the way I would hope a decent human being would use their money.
Right.
But other than what governors are doing, and governors are doing amazing things. Tim Walz, stand-up guy, man.
Yes,
stand-up guy. But what they need is one hand on one lever of power somewhere. And the only way to do that is the midterms.
Yeah.
And I know there's no crystal ball to look through, but based on the tiny points of data we've seen so far, the sweep of elections last year, the Texas election this year.
Last week.
What the hell?
That was
they had
awesome.
Trump backpedaling, going, I had nothing to do with me.
Right. Who was that? I never
bitch.
heard of it. I don't know that.
Yeah. Based on, if you use just that as diagnostic material, it looks pretty good for Democrats in 2026.
Yeah.
Maybe in the House and maybe even the Senate. I'm done wishing for what I wish. But then there's things they can do.
Yeah.
Then they can start cracking up, because remember, the J6 committee in the House did more investigation and exposed more stuff and did more good, frankly, than the FBI did, than the Department of Justice did, dragging their feet, being real slow, not being helpful. And I want every committee that has a Democrat in charge of it running investigations on anything that's within their purview.
Hell yeah.
And I want Hakeem Jeffries, or whoever the speaker is, to do what a speaker should do. Shut up, sit in an office, and deploy your troops wisely.
Right.
Put the smart people who are quick on their feet and know how to get a soundbite out in those committees, and push like hell. Make sure that everyone knows who these people are, and we got plenty of those people. We got plenty of people who are quick and smart and know how to point a finger and say, "You sons of bitches say you support women." Was it Rashida Tlaib who did that?
I don't know.
In her committee, she's like, "This. Show of hands. How many people here signed the discharge petition?" On our side, everybody.
Right.
How many people on your side signed the discharge petition? Thomas Massey.
Yeah.
Nobody. None of you white assholes over there did that.
That's
so
right.
how dare you tell me we don't care about women and girls?
That's
How
right.
dare you? We need like 20 of those people running committees. And then you'll see some things.
Yeah. Yeah. So we need to tell, everybody must vote. You need to make
Right.
sure your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, if they're those apolitical type, then then do it for me. If you don't give a shit about politics, fine. Do it for me. Do it for our children, our grandchildren. Do it for the future of the nation. Just if you don't care, fine. Do it for me.
And don't, if you're talking to people who spend 4 minutes a month on politics, have no idea, just lie to them. Just tell them whatever you need to tell them. Because let's face it, Republicans have been lying to their voters for my entire adult life.
That's true.
They
Yeah.
never deliver on anything except tax cuts for rich people.
Yeah.
Ever.
That's it.
And all these Republicans who are now like, I didn't vote for ICE kicking indoors. I didn't vote for. Yes, you did.
Yeah, you did.
You sure as shit did. And there was a big old book called Project 2025.
That's
if you bother
right.
to read it or pay attention to Kamala Harris, who told you this was coming, then maybe you would have done differently.
Yep.
But just tell them.
Oh, but they
whatever
couldn't
you
vote
tell
for the
them.
black lady.
No, can't do that because she's got a funny laugh.
Yeah, I
funny
know.
laugh.
She dances.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, get your friends to the polls. And this is where local stuff is important. This is where postcards to voters, small group meetings, there's this, I think, you never know it from the news. I think we're living through the largest sustained protest movement ever.
Yeah.
Possibly. Because we keep having No Kings rallies, which are
Yep.
huge and global.
Yes.
And in between those, we have places like Minnesota and Chicago
Yep.
and Los Angeles. So there's this sustained resistance movement that is huge that never makes the front page.
Right. But they're going
But-
out everywhere. I'm looking Phoenix. They've been out in
they are.
Phoenix. They've been out in Tempe. They've been out. People have been
Yep.
out in the streets. You're right.
Yes, they
but
have.
the masses come out for the No Kings rallies, and the next
Yeah.
one is in March. They just
Yep.
announced the date. But yeah, that's not enough. Just saying, that's not enough.
But it is. You can go down to any small town almost on one of these days and find 20 people on a street
Yep.
corner.
Yep.
And the fact that they're not in a giant mob, there's no place for people to gather as a mob, the New York
Right.
and DC, et cetera. But the fact that these small groups in these towns all over the country feel compelled as citizens, as mothers and fathers, to go out in the street and be 4 of them holding a
Yes.
sign
Right.
gives me hope. It means that there's voters out there who are never going to be the story, are never going to be part of the big march that you see in the streets of Chicago.
Yep.
But they're going to vote.
That's
and they're
true.
going to vote in their town, and they're going to bring their friends to the polls.
Right.
And you've pissed off a bunch of nice old ladies.
Yeah.
And I've learned anything from the church I go to, they're the ones who run everything. So
They should be, actually. Drift Glass, some of the other things, there is some, I'm trying to find good news where I can take it. And there's not a whole lot of it. But things like, where the good news is coming out of? District courts. So a judge in Oregon ruled that ICE cannot make warrantless arrests unless they reasonably believe someone's likely to escape. Now, I'm sorry they even have that caveat in there. They can't make warrantless arrests. You can't go into someone's house without a warrant. But then I go, okay, so if we're not lucky, this is one of the cases that will make it to the Supreme Court. The good news is that many judges below the Supreme Court are saying, you can't do this shit. Not every one of those cases will go to the Supreme Court. In fact, one of those cases, the Supreme Court just refused, and that was the challenge to California's gerrymandering, which came in response to Texas's trying to, screw with the districts in mid-decade to give themselves 5 additional seats in the House. So now, to his credit, Gavin Newsom in California said, you know what? We'll fight fire with fire. We'll do that here. Well, Texas got struck down, but the court said, we're not dealing with California. No, it stands. The lower court stands. So, you know what? They tried to do this to steal 5 more seats. Fuck them. So little victories are happening. And the more district courts rule against this administration, the better. And the more this extreme court decides, we can't take on all these cases. There are only 9 of us. There's only so many we can hear. And they say, no, those lower rulings stand.
Well, and I assume you've maybe you followed the Fred Judge Beery thing from West Texas.
Which one? No.
He's the judge who sprung Liam Ramos.
Okay. Oh, the 5-year-old boy. Yes. And
but if you read the decision,
Yeah.
oh my God, he quotes Thomas Jefferson. He goes through the grievances in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence against the king and says, basically, this is what they're doing. And I'm not going to let them do it in my court.
Yep.
And screw these people. And it's very eloquent,
Yep.
but it's not tempered language.
Nope.
It's not moderate language. He says these people are wiping their ass with the Constitution and not in my courtroom.
And if I recall correctly, I think he was a Bush appointee, wasn't he?
Clinton, I think.
Clinton. Oh,
but he's been around
okay.
He's survived all this time in
Right.
Texas, for God's sake.
In Texas. Okay.
And God, I never heard of him before, but suddenly he's
No.
out there saving the Constitution and,
Yes.
and reuniting a little kid with his family. And how cool is that?
It's what needed to be done. I mean, the reports we were hearing were horrendous.
Oh,
that
awful.
this little 5-year-old was really, really sick and getting worse. And the food there was crawling with worms and it's inedible. And this is going on in all these places. Well, now we hear there's another. It is happening in a few of these immigrant detention centers. But there's a new measles outbreak and one in Texas. Go figure. Some children in South Carolina in a measles outbreak have developed encephalitis. Thank you, Wern Man Kennedy. His family should make him stop using their name because he's such a disgrace to them.
It's a fight between him and Musk, who in the end is going to kill more people.
Yeah.
Either directly or indirectly through their direct or indirect actions.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot. It's going to be into the hundreds of thousands or millions.
Well, then and Stephen Miller, too, you got to remember because of their gutting of USAID. I guess that goes to Musk as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they really do think that they need to thin out the herd. I've said this before. Donald Trump just hates this country.
Yes.
Elon Musk hates his species.
Yes.
He hates the human race deeply and is as delighted to get rid of as many of us as possible who are taking up valuable space on his planet.
Right. No, you're right. And again, because they've got money, they've got that Ayn Rand attitude. They think everyone else is beneath them. We don't need to think about it. Look, Donald Trump, these maggots who vote for him, these guys in their pickup trucks with the Trump flags and all that shit, who probably don't have a pot to piss in. I don't either, but I'm not one of them. They drive up and down Ocean Avenue outside of Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. I'm not talking West Palm Beach. Did you notice Donald Trump never opened the doors of Mar-a-Lago and said, "Come on in, party with us, have a drink on me"? No, he doesn't want them there. They don't belong there. They're it's them. Ugh.
Yeah, they're the cannon fodder for his movement. They're there to be used and cast aside. And as this happens, I mean, it's happened to farmers where I live.
Yes. Right.
And I've talked to friends who are friends with farmers and who got screwed twice or three times, soybean farmers who got screwed repeatedly by Trump. And my friend asked him, "Why did you vote for him?" And he said, "I had no choice." Because, all you hear, and I live in the middle of this. All you hear on the radio down here, we have two different stations, both of which are right wing.
Yes.
It's Sinclair Broadcasting and Fox.
Oh,
the local paper is not worth anything, but it's a right wing Republican rag.
Of course.
So that's the only media here. And people have been saturating in it forever. And however nice they are on Sunday, Monday morning, if you go to the Sangamon County Republican Party, that's where I live, go down the list of the speakers they have for their Lincoln Day dinner every year. Corey Lewandowski, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk. I mean, it's just
not Charlie Kirk anymore, but yeah.
I know. Janine Pirro. For years, this is what local Republicans will pay money to listen to, who have money to pay, who are actually active party members.
Yeah.
And so this is not a surprise to me that these scum manifested someone like Donald Trump, who's giving them everything they ever asked for.
Oh, that's right. I'll tell you what you can do. In pretty much every community, though, there is a local Democratic Party club.
yeah.
Join
yeah.
it. Show up. I went last month, because we recently moved here in Arizona, and went last month, and I was amazed at how many people were like participating. It was so nice to see, because in Florida,
Yeah.
it was like the old folks' home, and everyone was half asleep if they went. This is different, and so the next meeting is Monday night. And I'm going to go again. And
Well, you're in Phoenix, right?
I'm outside of Phoenix. I'm in Chandler. So
Okay,
yes.
because I had family up in Prescott. And I just wish my mom were alive so she could meet you, because you two would get along great. She's an old hippie. She was an old hippie, died in the world, take no prisoners, awesome woman. But it is those sorts of people that you never see in the headlines, who
That's right.
I'm convinced will say, I'm not going to save us, but women who stand out, like the local nuns here, the local sisters here who are all about giving shelter to immigrants, who are sponsoring Ukrainian
Right.
immigrant family. Those are the people at the grassroots level who are A, making us look better than we actually are,
Right.
and B, are actually doing the organizing and getting the votes out, and might actually save this country from itself.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Always don't undermine older women.
Oh,
Yeah.
hell no.
Hell no. I'll point out one more. In Minnesota, we have learned more than a dozen of their prosecutors have resigned from the U.S. Attorney's Office there because they're, either they disagree with what they're doing, or they're so overwhelmed with the number of cases being thrown at them. So, and this article says, with hundreds of habeas petitions filed in court by detainees since then, federal judges are accusing ICE and government attorneys of ignoring scores of court orders to release them. On Tuesday, just 2 days ago, one of those attorneys hit a breaking point. You may have heard of her. Julie Lee, L.E., an ICE immigration court judge who volunteered at the beginning of January to help out the U.S. Attorney's Office because they were so short-staffed. She was then assigned more than 85 cases in that time. During a hearing, she made an emotional and dramatic plea to the judge. She said, quote, "I wish you would just hold me in contempt of court so I can get 24 hours of sleep." She said, "The system sucks. This job sucks. And I'm trying with every breath I have to get you what you need." Even the people who are kind of with them are saying, fuck this.
Yeah.
This is no good.
So there's an infinite amount of money to hire illiterate, knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing goons. To give them a gun, give them a big sack of money, give them a mask, let them go out and terrorize citizens. But there's not a nickel to increase the actual process by which you could make immigration sane,
That's right.
thoughtful, careful, and make these are proposals that Democrats have made. Marco Rubio made this proposal.
Yeah, but you
back
know
in the
what?
day.
Obama did it. Trump even admitted it the other day. He said Obama, deported more people than I did, and they, he didn't get this kind of, pushback. Well, one, he did, remember, deporter in chief, and
sure
two,
did, yeah.
he did it without killing anybody, and really with not that much pushback, because many of the people he did deport were the ones Trump said he was only going to deport. They were criminals. They weren't going through the system. Trump is taking people who are going through the system, in some cases, ones who are going in for their final immigration hurdle before they can go to the naturalization ceremony. Some right before the ceremony.
Yep. And trying really hard. I think a judge stopped it for the moment, but trying to get temporary protected status removed from 350,000 Haitians?
Yes, and a judge did stop it. This is what they wanted to do. They're targeting Ohio next. Well, because there's a big Haitian community there. And they tried it months ago, remember? They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Please.
Yep. Well, and this is not about immigration. This is about fascism. Clear,
That's it.
Unambiguous, absolute fascism.
Right. And Trump has his army, his personal army of brown shirts to do his bidding. This is what we must stop. So, Driftglass, you're the best. Thank you so much. we can do this anytime you want. and I wish Fran could join us one of these days. Maybe
One of these days she will. Yeah.
Okay, I hope so. All right, find Driftglass again, driftglass.blogspot.com, and the Professional Left podcast at proleftpod.com. And
All right.
keep going. We need your voice.
Thank you. Well, I'm off to bake cookies. How's that?
Oh, yum. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind?
Chocolate chip?
Okay.
Yeah.
Chocolate chips, regular, real, crispy chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
I'm all in. You know, it is Girl Scout cookie season. Just saying.
I know. And I'm a sucker for those, I got to say.
Me too.
Bye, sweetie.
Okay. Bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Tomorrow's Friday, everybody. Oh God. Marcy Wheeler will be here for another edition of Empty Wheel Fridays. And then thank God it's the weekend. All right. Take care. Thank you for being here. And you know what I'm going to say now? All right. Peace out.